Thank you. Good morning. The founder and president of the Asia Pacific Applied Economic Association, Professor Prasad, my friend, Governor of the Reserve Bank, Mr. Arif Ali, Mr. Neil Sekar, IMF representative, and I understand the Dean and the CEO of Asian Development Bank Institute, Mr. Tatushi Sonobe, is joining us online. Excellencies, friends, Permanent Secretary for Finance, Shri Gaundar, ladies and gentlemen. It's always a pleasure to join an audience like this. When I moved from being a professor to a full-time politician 10 years ago, I regretted doing that for almost a year, and I thought I would get over that. But I sometimes think that I'm still regretting leaving academia. I realized the switch from being an academic to a politician to a legislator to a policy maker was fundamental in two ways. One, I realized that good politics is not necessarily good policy, and good policy is not necessarily good politics, or good economics is not necessarily good politics. But I think it is important to understand the interface between policy, research, and I want to add politics to it. I know when I was doing a lot of research at the university with some of you, I can see some of my students also around. I often thought that we were producing something really interesting, that politicians ought to listen to us, that policy makers, civil servants ought to take note of that. And often we felt somewhat on top of things. But I can tell you, the reality is far from what we as academics sometimes think. And that is why I want to congratulate Professor Prasad, Governor of the Reserve Bank of Fiji, for RBF-ADBI-APAEA, IMF, and all of you, that you have come together to collaborate and work on research that is going to be useful. I addressed the closing session of the recently held Global Development Network Conference at the University of the South Pacific. And there I said that academics can come into a room, produce all this fantastic research. We all wanted to publish, I still want to publish in A-rank, A-star journals. But if that has to have any impact on policy, on directions through which policies are made, then this is what ought to happen. Where policymakers themselves get involved in undertaking research and working together with academics And often I think it's the policy makers that drag academics out of the boxes into something real. And I experienced this in my academic career when I started doing consultancies and working with governments and policy makers. I saw the difference, I saw the value of these kinds of collaboration. As a government, we have set and re-established our National Planning Office, the Strategic Planning Office. And I must say that in the last 2 years, that office has become a think tank, a section within the Ministry of Finance, helping the Permanent Secretary to bring together all government departments into a room, into a thinking strategy that brings that coordination. We have recently launched a National Development Plan, a 2-year, 3-year, and a 20-year vision. And we have said in that plan very clearly that we have ambitions of making Fiji a high-income country through that 2050 vision. And we are saying that while it may be ambitious, we can do that, but we can only do that by moving away from business as usual. Which means that we have to look at our implementation strategy, and our people in the Strategic Planning Office are working on developing that important implementation plan, and that itself would require good research, good collaboration with our academic institutions. I have myself personally looked at some of the papers that have been produced by the Reserve Bank with APAEA, and I must say that I am very pleased with the high quality of research conducted by the two institutions. I'm also pleased to note that other institutions like the National Provident Fund, various government ministries, statutory bodies, and those from the private sector are also getting involved and doing research with the two institutions. And I think RBF's leadership in collaborating with APAEA and ADBI is important. And as Professor Narayan said, reserve banks or central banks in most countries are important confidence builders. They provide signals. They provide leadership in building that confidence. And I want to say that since the last budget in July, and I want to thank my Permanent Secretary, Shri Gandhar, and the Governor of the Reserve Bank. I think the team that they have and the advocacy on economic policies that they have provided has brought a lot of confidence in the stability and the direction of our economic policies. The Macroeconomic Committee recently revised the growth forecast from 2.8% to 3.8%, although I think the committee is still very conservative. We might be hitting 4 or more than 4%, because I can see the confidence in the economy, and all the indicators that we have seen point to a robust economic environment this year and next year. I think this collaboration between RBF and the Asia Pacific Applied Economic Association and ADBI also lifts the regional collaboration and global partnerships. And I think it is very important. ADB is a very important partner for us, and this collaboration builds that partnership both at the regional level and at the global level. And I'm pleased to note that there are participants from the region here, and I'm also pleased that Fiji provides leadership in these areas as well. We've just come back from COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. As I said in Parliament yesterday, we're not particularly pleased or satisfied with the outcome as we expected, but the outcome is not bad. I think it is one that we can build on, and the nexus between economic policy, economic fundamentals, and climate change impacts is fundamental. So apart from, I know the focus is on monetary policy, financial policies, but I think the relationship between monetary policy and fiscal policy is fundamental to the overall policy framework for any country. And again, this collaboration, I think, brings those two elements together and provides a framework within which we can do better research that is more practical, that can inform policy. I cannot emphasize the importance of evidence-based policy making. And as Minister of Finance, I am deeply committed. As I said, when we established the National Planning Office, which was almost non-existent when we came into government 2 years ago, is providing that link with the academic community, with the universities. And the recently concluded Global Development Network conference was organized jointly by GDN, the USP, and the Ministry's National Planning Office. We are a member of the Global Development Network, and I would like to see more engagement of the National Planning Office with the Reserve Bank and with other institutions, other partners in this research network. I find that we have some very talented, very qualified people within the ministry, and we are making sure that we also provide opportunities for many of them to get the appropriate training and upgrade their research and communication skills. And I think, again, this network will provide them with the opportunity. Evidence-based policy making is critical for Fiji, and in some ways we are at a critical juncture. Last night in Parliament we passed a legislation establishing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, recognizing Fiji's past history of political upheavals, which has caused years of economic loss that has impacted on the quality of life of our people. And we believe that the establishment of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission will put a lid on the dark history or the dark chapter in the history of our country. And I always say that this is the first time in Fiji's 54-year history or independent history that a government has changed from one group to another that has lasted for more than a year. And this is a legacy that the coalition government, our government, wants to leave for Fiji. And in that, I invite all of you, researchers. I think economic research is very important. And I hope that many of you who are engaged in research will move beyond your disciplinary areas into broader, more multidisciplinary research, because I think more and more research, sometimes very obscure. You can have the best econometric models, you can have the best data set, you can have it published in the best journal, but if it doesn't translate into policy, evidence-based policy making, if it is not communicated, I think fundamentally a lot of good research remains within the confines of the journals because researchers don't communicate. And I find that very peculiar, and especially academics in our universities here. Many of them who publish good journals, good articles in good journals, are never able to communicate their findings, their research publicly, and are not able to defend their research publicly in the way they should communicate. So I would encourage the institutions to also provide a framework, and I think this is a good way to communicate research findings that many of you produce for the benefit of a broader community and broader policy making community in our region and in our country. So once again, I want to congratulate RBF, the Asia Pacific Applied Economic Association, ADBI, and all of you for coming together and sharing the results of your research and finding ways of collaborating and communicating your research. To all those of you who have traveled from other countries, welcome to Fiji, and I hope that you have a little bit of time seeing Fiji and enjoying yourself before you leave. बिना का बकलेबू धन्यवाद शुक्रिया